right, welcome to another edition of Osceola Chat. I'm joined today by the publisher of the Osceola, Jerry Cutts, managing editor Bob Ferrante, and we're happy to have FSU new tight ends coach Chris Thomsen with us. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, we know you're busy, and we do really appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule. We know you guys are still having staff meetings and recruiting still moving forward. It's a different time than that's ever been in the history of my life, and it's a little bit different for everyone in the United States. And so we want to start with this question. Coach, I know your wife has moved to town. What are you and your wife doing while you're sheltering in place? And from a personal standpoint, what's been the upside as a husband of being at home?
Yeah, we moved in here right after signing day into a house. We bought a house here in town, and really what we've been doing with any free time that we have is just working in the yard, trying to get the yard the way we want it, and that's been good. We actually during the week have a really busy schedule that Coach Norvell's mapped out. I mean, he's a very organized, structured, detailed guy. So whether we're in the office or working remotely, there's actually a really, regimented schedule that we follow. Whether we're doing meetings or doing projects on research on football projects that we've been assigned to do. So the biggest difference really, is being able to have weekends like the last weekend, for example, we would have had a Saturday morning practice. We would have had recruits on campus probably till about 6 p.m. and then probably would have had recruits most of or all of the day on Sunday, just because that's such a busy time in recruiting and also having spring ball going on. But without spring ball and with the dead period being imposed by the NCAA, we had the weekend off basically. And so that's the biggest difference is just, having some time off on the weekends and being able to do some of those things. And we would all rather be doing spring ball and recruiting and trying to move the program forward in those ways. But, it's also nice to have some time with family that you normally don't get.
Well, Coach, you're a veteran of the college coaching profession. Who have been some of the biggest influences in your career on your coaching style and the way you like to interact with your players?
Probably I've really been probably around all different kinds of styles of coaches. Coach Patterson at TCU is he's a phenomenal teacher of the game on defense. He's got a very aggressive in your face style as a coach, but it almost overshadows sometimes how smart and what a great schematic coach he is. And then, Coach Norvell offensively is a guy that, he's always looking for an edge on, every kind of way schematically that you can do it. And so, those have been guys that have impacted me a lot, just watching how detailed and how structured they are. As far as personality-wise, I don't know that anybody's really – I think I've kind of formed my own way in that I think the most important thing is to be yourself, and as I've gotten older, I'm probably not as animated as I once was when I was younger, but I can still get animated if I feel like I need to get the players' attention. But I've tried to, teach guys as much as I possibly can teach them without doing that. But it's, I think you evolve. I think you're always evolving as a coach, and I've just been fortunate to be around some really great coaches.
Well, you mentioned Coach Norvell. Obviously, for our subscribers that don't know, you were one of his college coaches. When was there a time when he was a player that you knew that he was going to be a good football coach, or what did you see in him as a college athlete or college football player that made you think, hey, this guy's got a chance to make it?
A lot of really great coaches were guys that maybe maxed out the ability that they had, and he was one of those guys. He was never a really, really big guy. He could run now; he's fast, but size wise, he worked really hard physically to make sure he was ready to play. But he was also, with receivers are guys that you either a one position guy or you're a multi position guy. If you're a guy that's really, they stick you in one spot and leave you, chances are maybe you don't have the ability to learn a bunch of different spots, which some guys do, some guys don't. But he was one of those guys. We could move outside, we could move inside, we could motion, we could do really all the things with him because he understood the big picture of the concepts. And so his work ethic, his passion for the game, combined with his ability to learn a lot of different things offensively, number one, made us a really good team. He was a huge contributor to some really nationally ranked offenses and nationally ranked teams, but also you could see the potential there to be a really good coach, and he probably could go be successful at anything he chose to do. But you knew if he went into coaching, he'd be really good.
Well, Coach, you guys had 12 tour duty workouts and 3 days of spring practice. What stood out to you about your position group, and what are you most excited about when you get the chance to get those guys back out on the grass whenever we return to some sense of normalcy?
Yeah, that's an easy one. What stood out the most to me was just work ethic. I've got a real differing range of players, and Cam will be a junior, so he's got some experience in college football and at the position. Wyatt, is a guy that was willing to move from quarterback to tight end, so he's a little bit, around the same age, but totally different in terms of experience at the position. And then Austin is a guy that was a basketball player primarily in high school, so he's a little bit still learning some nuances, and then Carter's a brand new freshman coming in at midterm, but they're all different in their skill sets and in their experience levels with the position. But the one common denominator is they really, 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 this is not just coach talk. They worked really, really hard. I think Cam and Wyatt really set the tone with that. I think those younger guys followed. Carter came in. It's really, really challenging for any player, but for a player that really just got out of high school, it's really, really tough. And he struggled at first, but I think watching the older guys and saying, man, I don't want to let those guys down. I mean, he really stepped up, and that's what has me excited going into spring ball. Really excited. The 3 practices we got was the same thing. Their attention to detail, their work ethic was really off the chart, and that's what keeps you going as a coach and motivates and inspires you. When players are that hungry, that makes you want, when that alarm clock goes off at 5 a.m. and you got to go to practice, that's what makes you want to get up there and go, is when you see it in their eyes. And all 4 of those guys have it in their eyes. So I'm excited to get back on the field with those guys as soon as we possibly can when it's safe to do so.
One of the things that impressed, I think, all 3 of us is we paid attention to the tight end group, because obviously it's a key component of what you guys are trying to do on offense. But Wyatt Rector, in that first day, I know it's only 3 days, but he was very impressive in that first padded practice, and it's probably been since high school that he lined up in a board drill. How impressed were you with his willingness to, number one, make the change, and then number 2, the amount of physicality and athleticism he's shown at the position?
Yeah, I was impressed by that. One of the things that's been good for me in my career as it relates to Wyatt is I've had 2 tight ends that were high school quarterbacks that transitioned to the position in college and actually both played in the NFL. One kid at Abilene Christian named James Hill that played for the Seahawks, and then a kid at Central Arkansas, one of Coach Norvell's teammates, Landon Trusty. And that's what you find with all those guys. Initially, it's that face-to-face physical contact that they haven't really experienced before. And, with Wyatt, he was very similar to those guys in that he wasn't 100% sure what that was going to be like, but he was not afraid to do it. And when you watch him attack the weight room and attack the mats and the things that you know, I saw the toughness and the traits that I thought would be able to translate like it did with those guys that I'd coached in the past. And so it didn't surprise me, but, you know, he's still got a little ways to go. What he's trying to learn how to do is transfer power. And you know, he's a very powerful kid. If you watch some of the videos online, you know, on Twitter of him lifting, he's a powerful, strong guy. But you have to learn to transfer that. And there's, you know, power starts from the ground up, from your feet up. You're pushing off the ground, which is what you do in a squat rack or a power clean platform. And so he's just learning. And that's the tough thing about not getting the spring practices with a guy like that is he's missing out on some time where he could learn to better transfer that power. But he's so smart and he's so locked in into doing it that I don't think it will hold him back. I think he'll pick up right where he left off and continue to improve once we get on the field again.
Coach, speaking of the players, you have the ability to communicate with them like we're doing today and by phone and that type of thing. What's that like, and what are the 2 or 3 things that you're concerned about that you want to be sure you help them with in this transition period?
You know, the things that I'm most concerned about is just really probably the mental health aspect of you know, Coach Storms was with us at Arizona State, and I was the offensive line coach there, and he was the assistant strength coach, but he really trained the offensive line. He was kind of responsible for that group. So he's unbelievable at what he does. There's a lot of those guys that were in that offensive line group that are still playing in the NFL in large part because of his training. So I don't worry about the physical aspect with my guys. I really don't. I know that he's also surrounded himself with an excellent staff. So I worry more about, you know, I think it's natural to all men. The more downtime we have, the more we're isolated and kind of left to ourselves. Our minds sometimes that's hard on us. That's hard on me sometimes. I don't want to be in my home office right here. I'm motivated and inspired by being around other coaches. When I walk in and Coach Norvell is in the hallway and he's crazy. He's moving around. He's 100 miles an hour. Here comes Coach Dillingham, and that energy is really what keeps you going as a coach. And it's the same for these players. You worry about them a little bit being isolated and away from that. And that's being so important to them. So, you know, we try to communicate with them. What's a little bit of an obstacle is right now we can't make them get on with us. We can send out a text, for example, with a FaceTime request and say, hey, let's jump on FaceTime at 3:00. But if they don't want to do that, they don't have to. It can't be mandatory. And I think all the conferences are kind of working through that right now. Some of them, I think, are actually allowing some mandatory meetings, but we're not able to do that right now. So, but having said that, our guys are pretty good about they're wanting that interaction. I think they miss that with us for the most part. But that's really the biggest thing. And then the nutritional aspect. You know, our staff, Marissa does a great job with that. She does an excellent job with the nutritional aspect. But, you know, just like with the strength staff, you can only do so much when you're not there. And so you kind of worry about all those things with them a little bit. But I just worry about them motivationally and staying inspired and encouraged, and just their mental and emotional health overall.
I got a question about you're coming to Florida State. You're obviously from Texas, have a lot of time in Texas at Texas Tech, a head coach at Abilene Christian. You were at TCU for 3 seasons, a highly successful program. Outside of the fact that you had a previous relationship with Coach Norvell, what was the draw to Florida State and Tallahassee for you?
Really what we talked about earlier, you know, just the program, the school, that Florida State is. I mean, I always knew that Coach Norvell would most likely get some sort of Power 5 opportunity, and knew that I would probably have some opportunity to maybe go with him. And so, never really thought about leaving Texas once I got back to TCU, and it wasn't something I was looking to do or wanting to do necessarily. But, when he called me, prior to getting the job, said, "Hey, I think I may have a shot at Florida State." That's not one of those schools that you take lightly, that there's other schools that if he would have gone to, I wouldn't have gone to, just quite honestly. So, you know, a big part of it is getting to work with him. But a big part of it is Florida State. And I think I always look at location. That location is really huge in college coaching as it pertains to talent, the talent pool, and TCU obviously is in a good spot in Dallas-Fort Worth in the state of Texas. And I've been there most of my life. And then at Arizona State, we recruited California really hard. But, Florida, Georgia is really an area that I've only spot recruited. I've never really been in it as full time. And so the four most talent producing states in the country for the NFL are Texas, California, Florida, and Georgia. So that was intriguing for me to get to work in that culture. I know, you always hear about the great athletes in the state of Florida, and then you hear about the great coaching, and then you hear about the great coaching and the athletes in the state of Georgia. And Tallahassee just sits so uniquely situated in that region that it was, all those factors were just, and at the end of the day, it wasn't really an easy decision, to be honest with you. But it was something I really wanted to do.
Well, Coach, I believe you had a previous relationship with former FSU coach Jim Gladden. Have you gotten a chance to sit down and talk with Coach Gladden, or as Big Buckle as his son calls him?
Yeah, that's been a really neat thing to meet some of the former coaches. And Coach Gladden, when he coached at Florida State, he recruited Texas heavily, and really has an affection for the state of Texas for a lot of reasons. But when I was at Abilene Christian, it was either 96 or 97. One of the coaches on our staff had been coaching in high school in Houston at Kingwood High School, and Coach Gladden actually recruited his school, and they got to know each other. And we really were not having much success at Abilene Christian, and we just were looking for a way to create an edge for our team to win more games. And the coach that was on our staff said, "Hey, Coach Gladden is a special teams expert. I've gotten to know him. He's excellent at it. Let's fly him out here. Let's see if he'll fly out here and teach us how to block punts." And so he did. He agreed to do that. We flew him in. We flew him in one night, and he spent a full day with us and really taught us some of the techniques and nuances about blocking punts specifically. We spent a whole day on blocking punts. And that following season, we blocked 6, 7, maybe 8 punts, and really had the first 7-win season that program had in a long time. So it made a huge difference. And, that was neat from a football standpoint. But as you got to know Coach Gladden, was around him, his character just came through, and you could see, man, what an awesome program that must be. And you'd always heard those things about Coach Bowden. So getting back here, that was that was over 20 years ago. And then coming in the door and seeing him in the hallway was, he didn't remember me specifically, but he remembered coming to Abilene Christian and doing that. And that shows you coaching's a small fraternity, and it all kind of comes back around a lot of times.
Bob, did you have something you were going to ask?
Yeah, Coach, I was going to ask you about your experience at Abilene Christian, being a head coach, and now being a deputy head coach here for Coach Norvell. It seems like you can be a right-hand man to help put out fires, be an advisor for him. Can you maybe give an example of something that you've done so far to help Coach, or maybe an area where you'd like to help him down the road?
I think, there's so many decisions that a head coach has to make during the course of a day. It's, I know, and I did it for 7 years, and there was a lot of days where I was overwhelmed. I mean, literally, you have everybody from every different department coming to you to make a decision. And some of those decisions are easy, and then some of them are pretty difficult, and you can get, all that can become a blur in your head at times, and you wonder if you're thinking clearly and you're thinking straight. And I think sometimes to have somebody to say, this is what I'm thinking on this situation and making this decision. Am I thinking this through correctly? Am I thinking this through clearly? And then also sometimes with the messaging of what you're saying to a team. Coach Norvell and we both agree on this, that what you say, on one hand, talk is cheap, and it is, but what you say to a team day in, day out, the actual messaging that you're giving to a group of young men and to coaches is really vitally important. Those guys hang on that stuff a lot, as much as sometimes we don't think they're listening. They actually are. So there's a lot of times he will ask me, did I communicate clearly what I was trying to do? Because when he calls the team up, or if we're in a staff meeting, that's what I'm listening to is, because I know the message he wants to give. I know what he wants to convey, and I'm trying to make sure that and he'll ask me a lot, did I convey that clearly? And most of the time it is, and then every once in a while I'll say, maybe make a suggestion. But I think those are examples of ways that in addition to your normal responsibilities, which are recruit and coach like crazy and try to impact in those ways, I think those are things. And then sometimes to make suggestions with team building or different things that we may want to do to try to help the guys grow as people. So those are just specific examples, I think, of what that role might look like.
Coach, you also, as a tight end coach, you've had a lot of experience coaching offensive line. What's your interaction with Coach Adkins and the offensive line?
Well, the tight ends and the offensive line work together a lot in this offense. There's a lot of combination blocks with the tackles that are involved. There's a lot of communication where we have to be on the same page in the communication from, say, the center makes a call and it's got to relay out to the guard, and then he's got to get it to the tackle tight end for a specific combination block or maybe something in pass protection. So, there is a lot of tie-in. When I coached offensive line, it was always helpful to have a tight end coach that understood those things. And so, that's one of the things that I'm most excited about and feel most comfortable with. And just in the short time we've all been able to work together is working with Coach Atkins in those ways. And we bounce stuff off each other, just like we just talked about with Coach Norvell. I've actually picked his brain a lot on because the tight ends still have to be an offensive lineman in some ways. They have to block down, they have to reach block, they have to block inside, second level, different things. And so I'll go in his office and ask him, how are you drilling this? How are you teaching this? How are you approaching this? And he's opened my eyes already to some things that I think have helped the tight ends already. So I love seeing how other offensive line coaches teach things and package things. And there's really, you'd be surprised at how many different ways you can communicate and teach and package stuff as an offensive line coach. And so, I've been really intrigued by listening to how he does things. I made him take me through all of his drills just so I can learn, so I can pick up stuff and a lot of little things that I had never thought about, and so it's been good. It's been awesome, really. I've really enjoyed that because coaching the tight ends allows me to stay connected with the offensive line because I love it, but also allows me to get into the perimeter game and what the quarterback and the receiver are looking at and what they're doing. And it's just been, I've totally enjoyed it.
One follow-up question to that came up while you were talking. I know you've been around Norvell as an offensive line coach, and this is Atkins' first year is there with Coach Norvell. Are there things in terms of scheme that you and Mike and Kenny and Atkins talk about that can be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, right now with this downtime, what's interesting is as we get on Zoom, in the mornings, what we're doing is we're watching the Memphis cut-ups. And when I say cut-ups, you're cutting up a specific segment of plays. For example, watch all the inside zone cut-ups, inside zone runs, all in succession, and just, talking through the different things that, and Coach Norvell and or Coach Dillingham narrating the talk in the conversation, but obviously we're just all trying to make sure we're on the same page, teaching the same thing. And as defenses present different looks in those sessions, we're able to talk through how did you handle this? How, why did this go wrong? And or why was it good? Coach Norvell is he's a very demanding guy on the offensive line. The offensive line has to know a lot of stuff. I joke that I used to, before I coached offensive line with Coach Norvell, I looked like Coach Atkins. I had the nice hair and but it can actually be a little bit stressful coaching the offensive line for him. And so sometimes when he's narrating, I'm thinking, man, I remember those problems coming up, as an offensive line coach. So, but the neat thing about Alex, he's coached offensive line for, he's, I guess, considered a younger guy, being mid-30s, but he's coached the offensive line and played it for a long period of time. So there's really not a look that he's not ready for. He's very well versed. And so it's been really good to go through all the different things. And that, as much as we would rather be on the field with the players, that's what this time is providing us to do.
All right, Coach. Well, we told you we were going to talk to you about some off-the-field stuff, so I think we've all got some questions. But are you a country music fan?
You know what? I like a lot of different kinds of music. When I moved to that town in Northwest Texas, I actually, my mom had remarried and married a farmer, rancher, and we had never lived in the country. And so that was my first exposure to country music. I mean, my stepdad he's a talented musician, plays the guitar and knows every kind of old school country music song from Johnny Cash to Tennessee Ernie Ford and, all these, legendary country artists. So when I first got experience of that, I don't know that I loved it, but I kind of learned to appreciate country music. And so there are parts of country music that I do enjoy.
Well, who's your favorite band? Obviously, it sounds like it's probably not a country music singer. I'm going rock and roll.
Man, my favorite band right now, I mean, really, to be honest, like right now, I mean, what I listen to 95% of the time would be contemporary Christian music.
Okay.
And so, but within that, there's some styles like Third Day, for example, almost has a Leonard Skinner sound to it, and that would be an example. But then, Lecrae, for example, is a Christian rapper, and I like hip hop music, and I'm trying to think of some Christian artists that would have a country. Third Day's probably the closest to that. But I really grew up. I had such a unique experience growing up, and was around so many different cultures growing up from really all different kinds of people that I really have an appreciation for a lot of different kind of music.
All right, Coach, we're all are self-isolated or quarantined outside of your immediate family or anybody that you're related to. If you could pick any three people from history, who would you choose to spend this time with?
Right now during this quarantine?
Yeah.
That you saying from whether they're alive or not?
Yeah, anybody from the course of history.
Man, that's getting into wow. So off the top of my head, what's made the biggest impact on my life really, is really my faith, honestly. So I would say that number one, I would want to sit down with Jesus Christ and really, because I'll study the Bible pretty closely and try to learn, exactly how he handled situations, different things that came up. So I would definitely want to spend time there. And then, there's a couple of, there's a writer named Brennan Manning, an author that I would really like to sit down and visit with. There was a book that really impacted me as a coach called The Season of Life. It was written about a guy named Joe Ehrman, who was a D lineman for the Colts in the 70s, an all-pro lineman that really went through a lot of different things, and he ended up being a coach, but some things that transformed his life. I probably want to sit and visit with him about some of the things that I've read in the book. I mean, yeah, I could give you way more than three. I'm reading one of Coach Bowden's books right now, and I got to meet him the other day. I got to meet him the other day, but didn't get to sit and talk with him. I would love to go have lunch with Coach Bowden and just say, all right, tell me about these people in the book. Because I actually reached out to Odell the other day when I was reading some of these stories, and I said, tell me about some of these people. And so I don't know. Those are things that, off the top of my head, those are people that I would want to really sit and talk with.
What is the last Netflix or Amazon show you've watched or binge watched?
Man, you're going to laugh at me, but I don't have Netflix or Amazon. I'm not.
Fair enough.
In fact, what's so bad is since we moved in, we haven't even gotten any cable or anything, nothing at all. We've got the actual rabbit ears sitting up on top of the TV right now. We get like CBS and ABC, and and really part of that because when I moved here, we were about to get some sort of television just for the NCAA tournament and all the basketball and then spring sports, because I love to watch that stuff. And then when all that got canceled, I said, don't even bother. So eventually we'll do something, but I really don't. Everybody gets on me about not being on Netflix, but I just haven't done it.
Coach,
go ahead, Jerry.
We want to wrap up your time here. We so appreciate how much time you've taken with us. Let me close with this one. If you were to talk to FSU fans, which you are, what would you say to them at this time?
What would I say to the fans? I would say that Florida State's an awesome place, and they would probably agree with that. But just from an outsider coming in, someone who's really didn't grow up in the Southeast and wasn't exposed to the program, I would just say that of all the places I've been, it's a very unique place. It's a very unique culture. I think that culture was set by Coach Bowden. The most unique part of it is that, when there's one leader for 34 years in place, there's a lot of impact and effect on people. And the type of man that he was, I think there's just a huge impact and imprint left on this culture. And that's very inspiring and motivating to me. And then you fast forward and you got a guy like Coach Norvell, who is not exactly like Coach Bowden, but has a similar heart and desire to affect young people and affect not only players, but coaches and people in the community. Like the guy legitimately cares about the whole thing. He really genuinely does. And I'll give you an example real quick. He's having us write handwritten letters to our current players this week in an age where digital communication is everything, text and FaceTime and all this different stuff. He's mandating that we write a handwritten note to our players and identifying one quality in them that we really, really have seen and admire, and then one thing that we want them to continue to improve on, and then just to reiterate to them, we're excited to coach you. and that's a small thing. It might not seem like a lot, but to those kids, that's a big deal. And so that's just an example. This guy really, really legitimately cares about people, and on top of that, it's a tremendous football coach. And so, that's what I would want them to know, is that it's legit. It's there's a real care and concern for the product of Florida State football, and a respect for the history of it, and an excitement for what the future holds.
Well, Coach, go ahead, Jerry.
No, I wanted to thank you for your
Yep.
time today. We appreciate it very much, and I know our viewers will as well.
Well, I thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, and feel honored to get the chance to coach here and be on with you guys.
Well, thank you, Coach, and I hope you and your wife stay safe and continue to enjoy Tallahassee.
We will. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right. Take care.